So as you can see, and I'm sure obviously what drew you here was two things. One is Jamie, but hopefully also climate change. So we're starting a nonprofit, and that's one of the things we're interested in doing is getting people, and especially young people, inspired and interested in doing what they can to help change the world, basically. So I think the way we're going to do this is Jamie's going to talk a little bit about about how we got started, a little story about CIC. We call it CIC, the Climate Innovation Coalition, and then I have a few slides, only maybe at the most 10 minutes. Don't worry, it's not a lecture. The main part we're hoping to get out of this is to have questions from you, okay, and your comments and your concerns and your questions, and especially of Jamie or me. But anyway, so that's kind of the sequence of things. So let me hand it over to Jamie.
Well, thank you. So I first ran into Professor Feist quite a few years ago on Mythbusters, and the reason for that was that he had written a paper on the psychology of science. Now, at the time, I was, doing this science-y sort of documentary called Mythbusters series, and it had proven to be surprisingly successful. We ran it for about a decade and a half, and it's been all over the world. And so I saw Greg's paper and figured that maybe he could help give me some insights as to what happened that made that program as successful as it was. And so, we talked and we kept in touch over the years. Eventually, in 2016, we stopped shooting the show, and I thought carefully about what I wanted to do, and now that I was no longer a trained monkey on television. And I built some prototypes, I invented some things, but looking back on that experience for a decade and a half, it's like if you wanted to do something beneficial to for the world, I guess encouraging a bunch of young people to get into sciences and engineering is not a half-bad goal. And so I asked myself, well, what's the second act for the Hyneman? And because making some prototypes or basically coming up with some cool gadget or other isn't really going to fill that bill. And but eventually I ran across some new technology. Somebody that I was working with had introduced me to some geothermal kind of efforts that are taking advantage of non-contact drilling and some other things that basically go down or allow us to drill through hard rock into really deep, hot zones anywhere that it's needed. And so, what that all ends up leading to is potentially in a couple of decades, if we got the support that we needed, we estimate over half of the world's energy needs could be met with this emission-free, cost-effective kind of power source that's just sitting down there waiting to be tapped into. So that's all well and good, but and I think the engineers will make that happen one way or another, as far as I can tell. The problem is time, because we're already seeing some catastrophic events that are related to climate change, and so I looked at the kind of notoriety that I have that I can use as leverage to help influence something to happen. and thought about it carefully, and basically that's when I reached out to Professor Feist again, because you know, I'm somebody that likes to do my homework, and you know, I'm not just going to poke around in the dark trying to figure out how to, you know, make some sort of I don't know, social movement or something like that. It's not my area of expertise, but there are people out there that do have that expertise, and so we spent somewhere over a year just racking our brains about how to make this kind of thing happen, like basically trying to get something to a point where it's effectively a wartime effort where everybody is mobilized to make these changes happen. You know, the enemy in this case being emissions. And so how do we do that? And well, we've assembled, we started to really bear down deeply on this. We've got on our team some social scientists. We have some engineers. We're looking at the psychology of what kinds of things that make movements. You know, we've analyzed everything from, you know, people like Musk, who single-handedly put EVs on the map. There are other people that, you know, I mean, all the way to Hitler, or you know, other famous people that have done both good and bad things that by somehow figuring out how to move large numbers of people. And that's what we have to have if we're going to make a dent. We need to have the entire world kind of bearing down on this, because and the United States is, you know, unarguably one of the worst offenders as far as the, you know, kinds of emissions and so on. The other thing that we started to look at was that, and by the way, what we're doing right now is the third experiment that we've taken on. I've done a couple of talks at a university in Finland that I'm associated with, and you know, the approach that I'm trying to see if we can get going is, rather than somebody like Al Gore or whatever getting up and, you know, arguing about or telling people what they should be doing or not doing, we sort of figured that, you know, the people that will be bearing the brunt of these climate problems, and the people that will be the ones that have to deal with them, are young people like yourselves. And so it's like you need you know, an old white guy to tell you what you should be doing. Is not, you know, I figured that we need to try and approach this more as an open discussion, where, you know, we'll reach out to any kind of scientists or experts that we can to bring them their knowledge to bear. But I figured it's more important to get people involved by getting them to ask to have open discussions about it, and basically my role, or our role in this case, and what I started in Finland was simply asking you all what you feel about it. What are your concerns, and what do you think it would take to get large numbers of people involved? I mean, we've discussed things, the obvious ones like social media, for example, is something that, you know, well, there are good good and bad things that that can accomplish, but it seems to thrive mainly on negative stuff that gets people riled up, and that's not what we. I don't think that's going to be productive in this case. But not that it shouldn't be used, but that's sort of where we're at, and that's why we're here. We want to hear from you. I just as a case in point, I found some interesting things from the second one that I did in Finland. We had a group that was not that much smaller than this group, but there was we started talking about plastic pollution, for example, and I was infuriated about this thing where the recyclables that you put in your trash end up getting bundled into bricks or whatever, shipped to someplace in Asia where they promptly dump them in the ocean, and I find that just like it just is so. I want to say nasty that people would do that. But one of the people in the group said to me that they were there at this university at Lappeenranta University of Technology, and they got there on a Fulbright scholarship. He said he was he's from South Asia. His family is dirt poor, and he said that we're mainly concerned about not starving to death. We step outside our home and see plastic bottles lying around in the street, and it means nothing to us. So that was the kind of interaction that I don't think I would run across normally. And I found that, and where I took that, and I'm just holding this out as an example, what the kinds of things that can come out with this kind of interaction, was that it says to me that it speaks powerfully towards income disparity. That if you've got all the wealth in a country at the top, and the bulk of the country is poor and they're just struggling to survive, that's a climate problem. That's an environmental problem, so those kinds of things need to be talked about. That's where I think if we can draw that kind of stuff out of people like yourselves and get a conversation going about it, that's I think something that would motivate people. Anyway, that's what this is about. We don't know whether this is going to work, but we're taking an approach that just, if we can provide information, if we can somehow encourage discussion, we'd like to see university students from universities like this one talk to other universities and their students and start to interact, and maybe kind of, I don't know, maybe eventually, if we get enough of that kind of interaction, we'll start to see some movement. So I've taken the floor for quite a bit.
No, that's exactly what we wanted.
Okay.
That's the backstory. And so yeah, I'm just going to spend maybe again 10 minutes or so going through a few slides, which kind of overview what we have been talking about for the last year. Which, by the way, with John Townsend in the back is one of his, and then Michael as well. And so we're some of the main people in this team so far. But anyway, so we want to go ahead, Lucas, and advance this first slide. So first of all, I just want to talk about, just very briefly, some of the core problems, some of the solutions, and ultimately, we have a very optimistic, I think an optimistic, or relatively optimistic point of view on this. But there are real problems, obviously, and as Jamie was just saying, we need ideas from other people. We're not up here to pontificate and say this is what you should do. We think, again, you're the ones who really need to take the reins We're just trying to facilitate interest and inspire action. So, so just a few things. You know, Luke, go ahead. So I teach a critical thinking class, and one of the things we were talking about for a long time is like, is this a conspiracy? Is climate change a conspiracy? Some people actually argue that. And so I put up this graph from NASA showing over the last 800,000 years the CO2 cycles, which you see. You can't really see completely, but that straight horizontal line there is 300 parts per million. It's always fluctuated around 300 parts per million over the last 800,000 years. And then look what happens. Around 1800, we have this huge spike, and then especially by 1950, well, like 450 parts per million. So that's kind of, to me, that's kind of incontrovertible evidence that humans, not just, you know, natural cycles of climate change. So this is clearly, to me, this is kind of factual and just kind of setting up the problem. Okay, Lucas, if we can go to the next one. Oh, yeah. So just to give you an idea, so Homo sapiens came along about 200,000 years ago, and another one. And then, do it again. Yeah, and then the Industrial Revolution. So it's clearly, since the 1800s or so, the Industrial Revolution where carbon levels have really started to skyrocket. Okay. A couple other slides on problems, so keep going. So this is just, you know, classic temperature change since 1860, and then especially since about 1950 or so, and that's in the vertical axis is Celsius, and you can see what's happened, especially in the last 40 to 50 years or so, a real increase in temperature. Okay. Obviously, so that's the inflection point around the early to mid 1960s is when things really started going up. Okay, next one. Now, so here's some of the bad news, which is that the vast majority, we've made real progress, as I'll talk about here in a second, but keep going. But still 82% of all energy comes from fossil fuels right now. Now we've gone down 2%. So that first one was 2000, it took 20 years to go down 2%. The good news is it took only so instead of 20 years, it took 2 years to get down to the next 2%. But that's not fast enough, obviously. You know, okay, go ahead again. And then this is just, you know, all this is just showing, the main thing to take away from this slide is that's cumulative carbon emissions all over the world. And notice it's not going down. Okay, it's going down, it's maybe the rate is slowing and so on, but the bottom part is the fossil fuels, and they're still going up. Okay, so next. So, and then, as Jamie kind of alluded to, next one as well, is that there's, I don't know if you can really see this, but basically the main thing to take away from this slide is GDP, the higher the GDP countries are, those are, each one of those dots is a country, and the US is way up there on the upper right. And then on the y-axis, we have income loss, and it's all the poor countries from climate change related income loss. So you can see the wealthy countries are having the least impact from climate change. It's the poorer countries. So this is the whole climate injustice element, which hopefully we'll get to talk about some. Okay, next one. And now let's just start briefly talking about some of the good things. This is the graph for the price of solar panels since 1970. It's gone down about 100%, solar panels, and in the last 10 years or so, it's gone down roughly 90%. Next one. Okay, and then this is the use of solar and wind. In the US is the yellow line, and then throughout the world. Notice there's a big spike around 2010 for wind and about 2015 for solar. So things really are changing, okay, drastically. Actually. Okay, next one. Battery costs have plummeted, which are not just in our phones and everything, but importantly for climate change, or one of the more important things is the whole EV car market. And so these cars are coming down. Yes, of course, they've historically been more expensive than gas-powered cars. But, and in fact, actually, one thing I want to point out, because I didn't know this until recently, we're on the cusp of these solid-state batteries. And one of the best companies, or main companies in the world, is right here in San Jose, called QuantumScape, making solid-state lithium batteries. And just to give you an idea, the idea is that these will have ranges of 600 to 700 miles, double what we have right now, in charging in 10 to 15 minutes, and they don't catch on fire. One of the problems with the current lithium batteries is there's a couple of Teslas, it's happened to a couple of Teslas, they catch on fire. Some phones catch on fire. So these solid state batteries are going to be a game changer, and they're right there. And they're predicted to come out, Toyota, maybe next year with these, and 700-mile range and 10 minutes of charging time, okay? Next one. So just since we're talking to students, a bunch of, just so you know, that I have two kids, I have a 22-year-old and a 25-year-old, and I tell them, look, the future of the economy is going to be in renewable technologies, you know, all kinds of, especially around here. So there's all kinds of, I don't need to go through all of them, but the point is that there's all kinds of renewable energy-related jobs and careers, and some up with pretty high incomes and so on. So there's a need, there's actually a need for a lot of this to happen, okay? You know, and again, hopefully you guys will not only get involved maybe with movements and so on, but maybe I know some of you are already in climate science related fields, a number of psychologists too, but we need you guys going into these careers to help solve this problem too, okay? So this is to kind of summarize here. This is more idea generation. This is what we want to talk to you about and get your ideas on. Despair, resignation are clearly not the answers, even though it is completely overwhelming. The more I get into this, there are times when I say, damn, this is just like, wow, what the hell are we going to do? You know, what can we as individuals do? And the answer is not a whole lot unless you collectively come together. We can't solve this problem. You know, we can solve this problem. Actually, that's one of my takeaways from my own thinking and reading and learning about this, is that technologically we can solve this problem. The technology can do it. It's the people problem and the policies and the politics that we need to really move and change. Because from a purely technological point of view, I think we can definitely create enough renewable energy sources to not easily and not quickly, but we can do that. It's really a people problem. So we have to be the ones. So we are, by the way, we all have to take ownership too. We all created this. This is in fact human-caused climate change. We're all humans, and we've all contributed to it, especially in the United States. We do in fact contribute a lot more. So one of the ideas, you know, I saw this other talk and I thought this was a great way to put it. Instead of being the last generation, let's be the first sustainable generation. Okay, you guys, you know, let's make that happen. So anyway, so that's the basic idea. So at this point, I think I am going to open it up and so just as Jamie was saying, this is about you telling us what you think and what your concerns are, and how you think about this. Yeah, and what's your name?
My name is Joshua.
Okay.
And so I actually...
We are recording this, so let's...
Oh, you are? Okay.
Thank you. So I actually do have an all-electric landscaping business. I actually started with my family a few years ago. And so this is actually really cool to see. One of my concerns is that I'm a conservative. And climate change is so intertwined with liberal policies that how do we separate that? Another thing is that it's very idealistic sometimes. And so like batteries, we know that China has a stronghold in Africa with a lot of them mining, and the way they treat people down there is atrocious. And so there's a lot of human factor to that. Lastly is also the grid. Here in California, we push for electric. You know, I am a full believer in renewable energies, but one of the things that I can't depend on is a little bit of rain here in the Bay Area, right? And so with all these, I think I want to lead into an idea, which is for gentlemen like yourself, providing a business model where people can build on top of.
Right.
Because you have blue-collar workers that mine the fields down in Bakersfield, right? You have blue-collar conservatives that are saying, why do we need all that? This is our part, our work. You want to take it away from us. And so bridging that gap, and I think maybe even separating the idea that renewables is strictly for liberalism. And so I know it's like 5 things I shot at you guys, but
no, those are all really good. And by the way, I'm really glad you were even the first, because Jamie and I, we've all talked about this. We want people not to agree with us.
Yeah.
We want a different perspective. Let me just say, the one thing I'll say about that point is that I ultimately think this is going to be, as much more than anything else, an economic issue. And then once renewables start really going to scale and the price comes down, and you have, so the solution to the wind and solar is batteries. But we need a lot more battery storage in order to do that, because, you know, you're right, the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. So you need, and then geothermal, of course, other non-intermittent forms of renewable energy. But the point is that it's too bad, yeah, and that it is so political, because we're all in this, you know, whether you're right, left, middle, whatever. And so we're trying, and we're hoping, and actually we've talked about this, one of the cool things about Mythbusters is that it was very non-partisan. People on both the right and the left really love the show, okay, and we've talked about maybe why that is. So we're trying to, and hoping that we can do that with climate change as well. Make it a non-partisan issue, because it really shouldn't be in a very basic way.
And I think it goes to the negative side, is that it's always being pushed as if you're conservative, you're against it, and you're trying to kill the planet. When most of the time, like the story about the Asian family, it's not about left or right, it's just about surviving.
Well, so why don't you, actually, you tell us, why you're
Oh,
I don't want to,
sorry, I'm taking
you'd be the only one, but why do you think that conservatives are kind of more against it? Because I'm kind of, as a
Because it
psychologist,
comes to the cost of the working family is the idea. And so the circles that I surround myself with, that is the idea, is that it comes to the cost of our backs, not your backs. And so that's when I was saying, like, a business model that can help start this entrepreneurial spirit of renewable energy. Like, for example, me starting the fully electric landscaping company, that was because, like, you know what, I see that the gas prices are going up. This is more economic than filling up a gas tank every day. And so that's really where it comes down to. It's like I work hard for my money. I want to give to my family. Why am I being punished for something that, like, even bigger corporations, bigger states like China, that have a huge effect on me, that I'm just trying to survive. And that's just the mindset that I want to encompass in that.
I mean,
Well, one of the things that we ran across in our research on this is that to think about not expecting people to agree on things, expect them to cooperate. And you do that by offering them what they want. They may be entirely different things. We've gone through and found, for example, things where both sides of the polarized situation are going to be, they're going to be concerned about their families, about their offspring, having a decent place to live and survive. So that's not something that the right or the left have different opinions about. And so if we try and find solutions as we go forward, not to change somebody's outlook or political attitudes, but when it comes to climate change, we all have to breathe, right? And we have to, we'll die from a flood or a drought just as quickly, regardless of our political stance. Thank you. And that's exactly what we want to see is, people on both sides, because, if you're already, a believer, then it's, or a believer in that climate change is happening and it's something we need to do something about. That's great, but I probably don't need to convince you of anything. I need to convince people that disagree with me that there is something that they should be doing.
Hopefully, if this all works, as I was saying, things will be cheaper. Actually, renewable energy and sources of energy are actually cheaper because they are renewable. So in the end, it's actually going to be cheaper for all of us, hopefully. If that, I mean, that's one of the goals anyway.
So I have a question, and since this group was of interest to me, but I understand we have a number of people that are studying psychology and social things.
It's a mix. It's a mix.
It's a mix. So if you wanted to generate or if you wanted to somehow start a movement of where there's like large numbers of people are going to be supportive of climate-related kinds of activities, what would you do? Like,
This is Lucas. He's in my personality class.
Hello, everyone. So when I think of popular climate change movements that have happened in the past couple of years that really did get young people excited, I would encourage you guys to study 3 names. Bill Nye, actually, Mark Rober, and Mr. Beast of YouTube fame.
Yeah.
So I would study those 3 names. So the first one being Bill Nye. He put out, I'm not sure if it was an advertisement, but he put out a video a couple years ago regarding climate change where he put on the safety goggles and he basically framed a video as if it was him going back to the TV show scientist that he was before. Instead of being very childlike though, he puts a blowtorch to a globe and says the world is on fucking fire. Really getting your attention there. And I remember that clip spreading around like wildfire around social media, around the circles I was in. And basically, what I take away from that is big names and nostalgic value can definitely play a big part in basically grabbing people's attention. And then for the other 2, being Mark Rober and Mr. Beast, Mark Rober was a NASA scientist turned YouTuber, and he always, his videos are very, inspire a lot of childlike wonder. They're very, you would look at him and you wouldn't think, oh, this man is advocating for climate change or advocating. He's an engineer doing what engineers do, making things, but he likes to take a spin on his videos. He likes to throw it in there without you even noticing. It's a very subtle effect. And then for Mr. Beast, he kind of, back in 2018, he had a campaign where he wanted to plant 10 million trees across the world, and he basically did what is essentially a large GoFundMe through his own network that got a lot of people excited. It generated a lot of press online, and he did it again in 2020 when he pledged to, with Mark Rober, collect 20 million pounds of trash in the ocean through specific trash collecting boats and whatnot. But both of these movements generated a lot of social media press and basically got their names out there. If you didn't already know them, you knew that Mr. Beast was trying to plant 10 million trees to help save the environment. And I think a combination of big names, nostalgic value, good user interface. I see your guys' logo, right? It's a good start, but I want to note that the background isn't transparent. The text is in, I believe, capital Arial font without a background, and it's kind of hard to see. And your
We need this.
And your hourglass on what I think is the Earth. I don't know. It just kind of looks like a blue circle with some white on it. But apologies for being maybe a bit harsh, but user experience and user interface can go a long way, creating websites with very user-friendly attitude. A big complaint here at San Jose State is our portal for using and getting around any of our systems, any of our classes. It's like it was made in 2010. It's incredibly bad, and I don't like using it, and I wish it was better, and that it was to the standard of something higher that a Silicon Valley giant should be, but it's not. And I think that having a good user interface, something inviting, kind of like being a salesperson. You wanna be very inviting. You wanna make something like you're walking through the mall, you see a nice store, you're like, oh, this looks nice, I'm gonna walk in. You weren't interested before, now you are. That's basically, another thing, I agree with what he said regarding cars and EVs. EVs are definitely a step in the right direction. However, not only is our workers being mistreated in Africa with cobalt and lithium mining, our power grid is still coal, which means, which is definitely an issue when it comes to charging, is it's not sustainable because it's off of a coal power grid. If it was off of, solar panel, then yes, it is sustainable, but at this current moment, it is not. And then battery degradation is a huge issue, because if a battery dies in a Tesla or degrades to the point where it isn't worth anymore, what are you doing with that? What are we doing with these batteries? Are they being recycled properly? How much is it to recycle such a giant battery? I took my car battery to O'Reilly Recycle, it was $50. That's 50 bones that's not going towards my tuition, I'll tell you that. But yeah, there's a lot of work to be done with EVs. I know you brought up Elon Musk as well. This is a very, depends on who you ask, but Musk is definitely a controversial figure, one might say. And so pivoting around his strategies might not be the best idea. That's just my own personal take. Anyone else can have their own opinion on that. However,
Well, I also mentioned Hitler, so...
Oh, he's definitely a controversial figure, but... But yeah.
I wasn't endorsing Elon Musk. I think it is good that, his, whatever he is or whoever he is as a person is, the EVs are a thing now,
right.
thanks to him.
Very true.
I also wanted to add the thing about batteries, and he's not an advocate for this, is that you've got the batteries don't generate the energy themselves. They have to be charged, for one thing,
Yes.
and then yes, they function as storage. If you go in the direction of hydrogen, however, you've got both the storage and the energy being produced potentially by it. And so that's where, if we were talking about these non-contact drilling things that can go down where it's hot, and we create steam from that, and with an unlimited amount of that, we have an unlimited amount of hydrogen potentially from electrolysis, and that means that we go in the direction of a hydrogen economy. We can have full-size jet airplanes flying on hydrogen, or tanker container ships, and all of that, zero emissions, and so on. So that opens up a whole different thing. And Musk he calls fuel cells fool cells, and thinks it's the wrong direction to go. There is a company, by the way, in Hollister that I'm associated with called Zero Avia, who is putting fuel cell powered commuter airplanes together. One of the intriguing things about that for me was that they pointed out that for these commuter planes, if they're, let's say they're doing a half a dozen runs a day, and if you were doing that with a battery where you're having to completely charge and discharge a battery 6 times a day, your battery isn't going to last very long. Maybe there's new technology that would change that with some of the solid state things, I don't know, but that's where one of the reasons that they went in that direction, and that made a difference, because they can fill their hydrogen tank and use it up and fill it as many times as you want, and it's not gonna that's not gonna change. So, and they're I guess what is it, Airbus and the UK, and they've got a number of investors that are going full speed ahead with that. And so, like most technology, it'll get better as it goes along. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Yes.
Hello, my name is Michael. Thanks for the presentation and providing the forum. I believe the question was, how do we generate a movement, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to bring 3 aspects to it. One is access, like there has to be an actual movement and it has to be available for people to join. Second would be incentive. So clearly, like the reality that we're all going to die, the world's going to burn is not enough, and like the monetary incentive has come up a few times. So where is the incentive going to come from to join this movement? And the third is going to be efficacy. So how can we prove that this movement is effective? Is it going to be effective on the personal level, or on the industrial level, or on the political level? And like, how can we instill change on those 3 levels? So,
Do you have any ideas?
no, I'm positing this question to you or to anyone else.
Well, I have something to throw out there that I'd like your opinions about, and that is that, you know, in the current kind of political situation that we have, and you know, there's just about any kind of institution there is distrusted these days. You know, they're like big business, big government, you know, the oil companies. I mean, I think there's been I guess a lack of general respect for these kinds of larger entities, which wasn't there when I was growing up as much. It seems to have been something that's relatively recent. And the one exception to that, as far as I was concerned, is universities. They're everywhere around the world. They are generally, unlike in the political environment, if you have a professor of, say, psychology at a university, you can be pretty sure he knows or she knows at least something about psychology. But a president of the United States, is there any requirement whatsoever? No. And the same with large companies and other and various institutions. The only one that I could think of was universities, and this was one of the reasons that I'm here, thinking that trying to get students to talk to each other from, you know, with other universities. This kind of goes towards your question, your issue about a movement, and so what do you think about that? Like, how can we get students engaged? Also, historically, students have been, you know, as I'm sure all of you know, have been a very powerful influence in world events. You know, whenever there's from the 60s to you know, things in China to, you know, it's I think they're anyway. I think you see the direction I'm going in. So if you wanted to do that, how would you make that happen? And do you think it's a good idea?
Hello. I think creating a movement is definitely possible. You know, as someone was saying earlier, creating a website interface, but making it a, you know, website that people can look to isn't the only thing that we can do. And that to actually make a movement, we need to hold each other accountable and actually group and meet together. You know, like the women's rights movement, Black Lives Matter, people gather together in order to have their voices heard and to make the movement actually, you know, feasible and make progress. And so, although, you know, we can gather together on social media, a lot of social media movements and trends are just that, they're just trendy for a short period of time. Versus if we want something to make an impact in the long stand, we need to kind of hold each other accountable. And, you know, within the group of the movement itself, and then also with our society. And that doesn't necessarily have to always be uncomfortable, because accountability could also be just us lifting each other up to do better. And so I think, you know, creating groups or even clubs at the university settings, if you wanted to have like an It's Time like group within each university, that could provide a meeting place within the universities and across universities if they gathered around like once a year in order to come up with ideas, push forward movement, push forward, political legislation potentially, and also getting, other majors together besides, psychology and engineering, but even probably like political science majors. Because I feel one of the issues, or some of the issues that people were talking about today was that, yes, we can individually try to do better, but how are we going to push legislation in order to actually make actual changes? So I think, having that political science aspect in order to help propel, legislation and hold our government accountable is also going to be something that the movement could do as well.
Thank you.
By the way, and we've talked about this, and Michael might want to talk a little bit about this, because what you just said about getting like its time on campus, but then across the country, and then even ultimately across the world, and having even simultaneous meetings of these groups. Not just here at San Jose State, let's say, but at Moot in Finland or some other universities across the world, and having simulcast. And our friend Michael here was suggesting kind of this with some of the stuff he knows. He knows a guy who's kind of done this in music and so on. Yeah, it's going to take some technology, but anyway, I mean, but just so then it's not just a single group, it's multi-groups coming together at the same time and communicating. Yeah. Did you? Oh.
Thank you. That was great points. Really appreciated the points that Lucas made earlier. Fortunately, he left. I guess the solve for X that you're really looking for is how long of a movement do you want? The solutions are easy. The work to get there is hard. And that's where really sustainability comes from. Kind of having to be a little bit more truthful with where we're at right now and how we get to where we need to be. A lot of the sort of wishful thinking solutions that are out there, while they're good for right now, planting trees, collecting ocean trash, those things are fantastic, but they make such small dents in the overall problem. They create a lot of interest, but the group of people who follow that, eventually they'll see that it had no impact, and they'll become disillusioned. We'll repeat this cycle again of hippie generation looking for a solution, not seeing one, and just buying into the sort of standard, let me just take care of myself and my family. So if we focus on these solutions that really help, like Jamie, I really appreciate you bringing up geothermal. I mean, these are fantastic solutions. Google just recently unveiled one of the first geothermal stations. We have fracking that is no longer really cost efficient anymore, so that's a lot of pre-drilled holes for us to utilize. There's a lot of solutions that are out there that require a lot of boring work. And I think being truthful with a young generation that this is boring, there is no easy button, there is no fun, exciting solution that you get to put on your Facebook page or your MySpace or your TikTok or whatever that makes it seem like, hey, I'm being a part of the solution. It's going to take a long time and there's no easy button. Anybody selling the easy button
isn't going to solve this problem for us?
Yeah, unfortunately not, no. I've worked for Greenpeace, I ran the San Jose office here, I've worked for Tesla, sort of seeing the other side of the equation that he doesn't like fuel cells because he's trying to sell his batteries. It has nothing to do with him not liking fuel cells or you disagreeing with fuel cells, it's just he's trying to sell batteries. And at the end of the day, those only have a short lifespan, and then you have to buy more, so it's just sustaining more and more for himself. I would also say that the conversation about price, we shouldn't always break it down to lowering it to a certain price point, because the average worker working in natural gas makes $120,000 a year. The average person installing solar makes $50,000. They're not going to go for that solution if they're going to take such a pay cut. So yes, getting the price down of solar is important, but we still need to have good middle class jobs where that's where the government needs to come in and sort of create a sort of World War II level of effort to be able to solve this problem.
Thank you. Yeah, the thing about drilling and stuff like that being something that's boring and hard work and whatnot, one good solution that came across our research was that that a lot of the technology that will be used in drilling these geothermal wells is stuff that came from the oil and gas industry, like the same kinds of drills, at least in the upper edges of it. So the people that do that, have been doing that for fracking, could easily be switched. It's already the work. It's the work that they know how to do, and that's a win-win if you can do that. One of the things that I'm concerned with that, though, and we've started to see this happen a little bit, is oil companies wanting to invest in this kind of thing, and you're not going to know until it's too late whether they're investing so that they can control it and mothball it, so they can continue to, sell fossil fuels, or are they doing what they say, which is that, yeah, we can read the writing on the wall and we're going to make the transition by doing the right thing. So it's an issue, but those are definitely, as I mentioned before, try and find things that people want and go in that direction instead of just telling them that you're all going to die. It doesn't really help that much.
Hi, I'm Mikkel, so sorry I have the jitters right now. But I think that in terms of long-term solutions, we can't focus on sensationalizing climate change. I think it's too big of a beast for us to stay focused, and our 24 hours news cycle is constantly changing and shifting focus. I think a better solution would be for our society to evolve past the industrial mindset that we have here in America, at least, into a more post-industrial where we're focused on technology. We have, like you said, we have the technology available: solar panels, wind power, geothermal. I only read about it as a kid a little bit, but all I know is you stick a metal rod in the earth and heat that up. Nuclear energy, we have thorium now, which is much safer than we used to use. Those are all options available to us, but we just don't have a focus on it. And every single time our government tries to incentivize it, it means pushback from other big companies and such. I don't think metal straws are going to save the earth when we have that as a solution. Sorry, heart's racing here. But yeah, I wrote down a lot of stuff here. Give me a second, sorry.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
I like your point about it's not the small stuff we should be focusing on. Is what I hear you saying. One of the things I hear you saying.
Yeah, I agree where we should focus on more on, I guess, shifting our perspective of how to combat climate change instead of just tackling it straight on, head on. We change our society first, and then climate change comes as a result of it. Yeah. Also, you and Adam made science cool for me, so thank you.
By the way, that's you know this already, but there's a lot of people, even in this room, like Yvonne, is one of my grad students, who went into science because of you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was just trying to make a buck.
Did it work?
Yeah. I did want to mention something like I got involved with Finland because, well, they reached out and gave me an honorary doctorate and stuff, and for some reason we hit it off. So now I have an actual professorship there, and I am quite involved with the university and have been for, I guess it's about 7 years now. There were some interesting things about Finland. One is that, as most of you probably know, they've been rated the happiest country on earth for a number of years. They will tell you maybe, well, one of my colleagues there said, I don't know, I don't really feel all that happy. Maybe a better way to put it is that we're the least unhappy country on earth. And the reason for that is that they have what they need. It's like they have free education, healthcare, they're looked after, they can, you know, there's also a general attitude there that, you know, I guess it's that extravagance is not celebrated like it is in this country. You know, having what you need, yeah, it's not like they're running around, you know, jumping for joy all the time, but they're content. And you know, one of my questions is, you know, why would you want why do you want anything more than that? If you've got, you know, maybe if we're looking at, you know, there's a certain bottom line kind of thing. How many people is the planet going to sustain? And some of that is to do with, you know, how they consume resources. So if you're determined to, you know, make more people or have more people live on the planet, you know, maybe you need to change some of the attitudes about consumption. So anyway, I thought that was sort of interesting that there's a culture that you know, they haven't cut all their trees down. They have modest lifestyles as a general rule, and they're quite happy. So something to keep in mind.
Hello, my name is Amber. I wanted to elaborate on Kelsey's point because I thought it made me think about we really need a cultural reset because when I was thinking about solutions for climate change, I was thinking about public transportation, specifically in the Bay Area, because I know to get anywhere in the Bay, you need to drive a car because I think the options for our public transportation is not like the most great. I mean, when you think about like the buses, they're dirty. It's not very, like the bus routes are so confusing, and it's just easier to drive a car. But when I thought about like how we could get a better public transportation system, it really has to do with the government, and it has to do with the culture in our country, because I think public transportation doesn't work because people don't care enough about government-owned property, because it's not theirs, it's like capitalism. So when we look up like at other countries, such as like Japan or Korea or like Finland, I'm sure they have better public transportation, and I think we should strive to have that sense of communal care.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
I agree with what you said. I agree with what Jamie said earlier, that it would take a sort of World War II sort of mobilization to address the issue. But one of the issues is that in World War II there was an existing military and the threat was much more present. You know, Japan had just bombed Pearl Harbor. Nowadays it's a little harder to direct people and say that this is a problem, because it's hard to even explain the problem generally. And I think one of the main issues that we're running into is that there is a lot of support, especially among people like us, to solve the problem, but neither of the political parties has any way to regulate their ability to make a plan and execute on that plan, because there's a current paradigm where it's a cultural issue about whether or not you believe it's a big enough problem. And so, since it falls on the left-right spectrum, you mentioned Al Gore, and ever since that campaign, it's become sort of like, you know, are you kind of like a hippie, or are you like a you know, conservative somehow, is supposed to be what differentiates whether you care about the issue or not. It sort of becomes like, you can vote for a politician that says that they want to solve the problem, but there's no larger structure that will ensure that those politicians actually come up with a plan and execute on it. I think that's sort of where this generation could make a change. There were questions at the Republican debate about whether those candidates would actually try and address climate change, but they sort of got shut down by people in power, or people that were on stage at the time. So I'd say it's going to be a lot of work on our part to create those incentives for
And
politicians to follow
as
through.
was said earlier, making it sustainable.
Right.
The hard, long. Oh wait, let me say one thing about that too. I just was thinking as you were talking, you know, I have family in Kansas, and they were farmers historically, and we still have a lot of land. I inherited some when my dad died, and I had some cousins who resisted the energy companies came in and said, Kansas is extremely windy. It's the windiest part of the country. And so they wanted to put wind turbines on our land. And some of my cousins were like, oh, no, I don't believe in that, you know, whatever. And then, you know, and then how we have some. And it's amazing passive income for us. And there's a lot of farmers in the Midwest for both solar and wind who are realizing that this is actually better than farming. You know, that they actually make more money. And they don't even really have to do a whole lot about it. It's energy, they just have to rent out their land. So, I mean, there are some, and by the way, and so the reason I bring that up, though, really, besides the economic part, is the political part. These people who were resistant to it, you know, for political purposes, all of a sudden realize, oh, it's maybe not so bad, you know. So that's the kind of thing, too, is that when they see that it can affect their lives, and it actually makes some things easier in their lives, then I think there's some attitude change. And we know that in psychology. One of the best ways to change attitude is, one of the best ways to change behavior is to change attitude. You know, if you change the attitude, then, you know, you got to have both of those together. Yeah. And yeah, so we're a little bit after 3, so maybe 5 more minutes or so.
Thank you. I'm Lou. So on the topic of creating a movement, I've noticed a big issue, like not so much a big issue, but there isn't really a sense of whole community about it. I grew up backpacking, I grew up doing a lot of outdoor stuff, and something I've noticed is a lot of people who end up doing that thing in their free time end up getting into sustainability because it benefits the community, and there's a community behind it, and you know, you're out hiking, you don't want to leave trash behind because you'd be harming somebody else's experience. And when it comes to movements, I've noticed, especially with how you mentioned the internet, there's a lot of negativity behind it, and there isn't so much that sense of joy and community anymore. You look at things like the punks or what have you, they had a lot of things that they were doing politically, but they could still go out and like meet people and connect with people, and that's what kept it really running even to this day. So.
Why don't you hand this?
Hello, my name is Veronica. I am not a psychology major, so props to all of you guys.
Just stand up.
I do want to thank you guys for having this. I think it's important for us all to be present, and that's another huge aspect of bringing it to universities. I'd like to bring up Cal Berkeley. A few decades ago, they had so many movements because so many other students lived in close proximity to the university, whereas here at San Jose State, many of us and our university is known as a commuter school. So I felt like we would have this room filled if many of our peers were not working or lived elsewhere. So I feel like having everyone present, we get so many different backgrounds and get to know other people's way of thinking. I am Mexican, but another Mexican or Latino or male may have a different perspective on an aspect or a challenge. So I feel like a movement, we all have to be present. And if we had more living spaces here in this expensive city, we'd have more students here. So I feel like we all need to be present at all universities, having the accessibility to be present and not miss out or have to rush to our works or other obligations is huge in getting anything moving along. Thank you.
Good point.
Yeah, thanks. I think that that is actually a really helpful thing. You were talking about, you know, having a sense of community and everything. One of the sessions in Finland went well enough that that group of people that were made up largely of people from the student union They're now doing it once a month. They're actually, meeting about climate and so on. They came up afterwards and thanked me for giving them an opportunity to be heard, and they were very enthusiastic about it. That was to be a 1 hour session, kind of like this one was, but it went for 2 hours, and they were still going. And I think that was largely thanks to what you're talking about, that they started to feel like, they had a voice, and they had a kind of a started a community of people with similar concerns.
By the way, if I can say something, this is actually an important point. I meant to say this earlier, especially before everyone leaves, because we don't want this to end here. So we do have a website, cic.earth. Go there, you can communicate with us, because we would like to connect all you guys. So if you want to do something, if you want to join forces together and maybe start forming, like what Jamie's saying in Finland, your own group, communicate through us. You can find my email also if you need to on campus email. It's easy enough, greg.feist@sjsu, so on. But let's connect people in this room who are really interested in carrying this forward, because that's what it's about. It's not about talking, it's about doing. And we need action, and so the best way to do that is collectively and communally. And I fully appreciate San Jose State is a commuter campus. We're not and that affects faculty as well. We're not all as tightly knit as some universities are, but we still can do things, if nothing else, remotely on Zoom. One of the good things about the pandemic, we now can do those kinds of things. But anyway, so definitely if you're interested in carrying this forward, send us, connect to us on our website or whatever, and then we'll connect all of you as well, or whoever, because we do need this to become more than just a talk. Okay.
You want to call it?
I think we should call it.
Well, thank you.